How's it going, everyone, and welcome to another Elder Scrolls 6 discussion video where we're going to be going more in depth on the possible location for the Elder Scrolls 6. Now, I know I'm a little late on this, but recently some very interesting hints have surfaced that the location that we're seeing in the Elder Scrolls 6 announcement trailer could very much be Hammerfell. In my previous video, I talked about how the sand and mountains that we can see, as well as the castle in the distance, pretty much confirms that this location is Hammerfell, but recently even more hints came out about this announcement trailer that support that theory even further. I also do want to give Camelworks credit for this, as he was one of the original people to pick this apart, so definitely a big kudos to him. So when this trailer was first being looked into, me along with many others really wanted to know where this trailer actually was located on the map. And after looking in between the lines at the smaller details, I feel as if we could have an answer to that question. So of course, as we can see, the camera is panning out of some kind of foggy mountain range and then slowly moving into the large open landscape that we are speculating to be Hammerfell. Now, we all know that Hammerfell has mountains, but if this trailer had to take place anywhere, then it would have to be up in the Dragontail Mountains. Now, I know that there is smaller mountain ranges located across Hammerfell, but let's pay attention to the large body of water that we can see on the right side of the camera angle. If we look at a map of Hammerfell, we can see that the Dragontail Mountains move right past River Bjolse and slowly into the expansion of the Iliac Bay. And just looking at this body of water, it seems a little too large to be a river, so I feel like that this is very much Iliac Bay. Also, if you look closely, you can see 3 pieces of land protruding out into the bay, and if we look at another Hammerfell map and look around the same area that we are speculating this trailer to be located in, we can see 3 pieces of land protruding out into the bay. Now, one detail that completely dominates most of this trailer is the large crater that we can see off to the left side of the camera angle. Now, I'm sure many of you remember that same castle that you've probably seen multiple times watching this trailer, but what you probably didn't know is that this castle may not be some kind of abandoned Redguard fortress, but it may as well be a town, and that town is Azura's Crossing. Now, Azura's Crossing is a town that has only appeared in one Elder Scrolls game, that game being the Elder Scrolls Travel's Shadowkey, and according to the lore, Azura's Crossing was a town that was built around a large crater that had formed after Azura Nightwielder had lost control of his shadow magic. It is said that Azura Nightwielder was among the greatest mages of the Third Era. He was the first to discover the nature of shadows and developed a new type of magic later known as shadow magic. Because of the power of shadow magic, Azura was an enemy of those seeking to misuse it. His progress in studying shadows became greater than ever, and at some point during the Third Era, Azura attempted to do the seemingly impossible, to meld all his existences in shadow and strengthen himself through the use of shadow magic. As a result of the power he could wield, he was feared by others. Ignorant Redguard soldiers who were opponents of magic and its practice in general surrounded Azura in Hammerfell in an attempt to thwart the Shadow Mage's plans. During that battle, something had gone awry and Azura lost control of his magic. Overwhelmed, he had to blast a hole in the ground and disappear. After the battle, a village grew around the hole. It was named Azura's Crossing in memory of the events that took place there. Many other shadow mages like Pergan Azul and Skelos Undriel strove to take Azura Nightwielder's place since his disappearance. Now, this lore seems to accurately correspond with this landmark that we can see in the trailer, but some of you may be asking where actually is Azura's Crossing on a map. So if we look at a border map for High Rock, Hammerfell, and Skyrim, and we look at the location that we believe the camera is panning out of, this mountain range right here, we can see that in this open area past all of the mountains, we can see a settlement marked on the map called Azura's Crossing. So if this is actually the location that the camera is panning out of, and we do see a settlement in the distance, and we do see a crater next to that settlement, and we look back at the Shadowkey map of the same location that we believe that this camera is panning out of, only to see Azura's Crossing right outside of the mountains, which is a settlement with a crater next to it, how could this not possibly add up? Another really interesting detail that I want to point out in this trailer is the settlement that we can see way off in the distance that comes right before the 3 pieces of land that are protruding out into the Iliac Bay. Now, if we look at a map of this supposed area, we can see that there is a town that comes right before the 3 pieces of land named Sata Kalam. So if this location is exactly what we speculated to be, then this town or city that we see off in the distance would have to be Sata Kalam. Another detail that Camelworks pointed out in his video that I found very interesting is the white birds that we can clearly see flying towards the water. And you might be saying, well, they're just birds, but if you actually look back in the Elder Scrolls lore, there have only been 2 white birds that have ever existed in any of the Elder Scrolls games, one being the Felsod tern, which is native to Solstheim, and the other being the seagull, which has only been seen in locations in or around Hammerfell. One of them being in the Elder Scrolls Redguard on Stros Makai, which is an island of Hammerfell, and the other being found in the Alakir Desert in the Elder Scrolls Online, which is of course part of Hammerfell. And yes, there always is the possibility that Bethesda Game Studios just added some new birds into the Elder Scrolls lore, but this is still a very interesting detail nonetheless. Now, another detail that I wasn't too sure about in this trailer is the mountains that we can see off in the distance that appear to be snow-capped. So the reason I'm not too sure about this is because if you look back on the Hammerfell map and we look at that area that is believed to be where the camera is actually coming from, there couldn't be a possibility of snowy mountains in this direction. The only place that we would be able to see snow-capped mountains from this location is towards Skyrim and Cyrodiil, where we would see the Geralt Mountains. But the direction that the camera is believed to be moving in completely eliminates these mountains that we see in the distance to be the Geralt Mountains. And that brings me to my next point, where I feel that this trailer could possibly be taking place somewhere else in Hammerfell. Because after looking back at the Hammerfell map, I found a very prominent location that could very well be the location that we are seeing in the Elder Scrolls 6 trailer. And that location is right here. Now, as you can see, this is a pretty fair representation of what we see in the trailer, the camera coming down from the mountains and slowly moving into a less mountainous and more grassy landscape. But more importantly, if the trailer was to be taking place in this exact location, then those snow-capped mountains that we see off in the distance could very well be the Geralt Mountains right off the border of Hammerfell and Cyrodiil. Another argument about the trailer taking place up near the Dragontail Mountains is the way the shadows are positioned. Now, most of you probably know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west in both the real world and the Elder Scrolls world. And if this trailer were to take place up near the Dragontail Mountains, then the sun would have to be rising or setting in the north simply because of the shadow positioning, which obviously doesn't make any sense. There also is a good chance that the sun is indeed setting in the west, and it is actually casting this shadow, but it's cropped out of the trailer enough so we don't actually see it. However, I still think the shadow positioning in the trailer is quite odd, seeing how the sun actually works in the real world and in the Elder Scrolls world. But if we revisit that location that I speculated upon earlier, then this logic actually applies. Because if we were to be heading down from the northwest and into the southeast, and the sun was to be setting in the west, then it would be able to cast this shadow seen in the trailer. Now, at this point, you may be wondering about the 3 pieces of land protruding into the water that we do see in the trailer, as well as up near Iliac Bay on a map of Hammerfell. However, I've found that even at this location in Hammerfell where the trailer might be set, this still actually applies. Because if you look at a map of Hammerfell and you look at this same location, you can actually see pieces of land protruding out into Hughes Bay. Of course, the land that we see protruding into Iliac Bay is much more believable. However, there is a chance that Bethesda could have done something differently and just reshaped the land, because not every map that we see of a province is 100% accurate. There is a chance that Bethesda could do something different and slightly alter certain parts of the land. However, the trailer taking place in this location completely eliminates the crater and the old castle being Azura's Crossing, simply because this isn't the location of that town or of that landmark. But anyway, let me know what you guys think about this in the comments down below. Where do you think this trailer is being set out of Hammerfell or High Rock? I would really like to know what you guys think. I also do apologize for not getting the Starfield speculation video out sooner. I just thought that these were some really interesting finds, and I thought that I would share them all with you guys. So until then, I'll be seeing all of you next time.